So, Jessica Annika Horn. So you're the daughter of Mike Horn, and for those of you who don't know, he's a born in South Africa, Swiss explorer, adventurer, did basically everything. Went from sailing, walking, going through from pole to pole, going to the North Pole alone in complete darkness. What a father figure. And that's impressive. That's why we wanted to know how it is to actually live that legacy. And for this, we sent a message to the North Pole, where your father is currently, and we asked him if he could send us a video with the message for you and for the youth. So let's see that video.
The most important message we can give to the future generation is to be able to have two things. One is a solid base with the best possible human values, to be able to believe in your dreams. And as my father always said, if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. That is where it starts. So we've got to be able to set the base for my kids or for other youth to be able to believe in themselves, to make these dreams they have become reality. And how do you do it once you've given them that solid base? You have to give them the wings to fly. And the wings to fly will allow them to go out there and discover the world. And what is the most important is they have to be able to do what they're good at. They've got to be able to do what they love doing. And then to be able to add value to the world gives them that confidence to keep on pursuing their dreams. And then if they earn a little bit of money, doing what they love, doing what they're good at, doing what the world needs, that is when you pass on the message that will lead them into the future.
Wow. What a message, huh? Dream big, fly, use your wings, do what you love, go to change the world, add value to the world. I can imagine that it's also it could be heavy. And I'm sure that I'm curious, how is it in reality? Because this is the talk, but what is the reality? How is it to be raised by that man?
Intense. Yeah, it comes with a lot of pressure, naturally, but this message is also really encouraging. And something that stands out for me personally in this message is that part where he says, do what you love. And that's interesting because up until now, he kind of gave us a different type of message. He always told us, my girls, you need to learn to love the things you hate doing.
Yeah, he always said that. And he's the type of man that likes to lead by example. And he really tried to do that by sharing experiences. So he wanted to introduce us to the world of adventure at a very young age, when we were 12 and 14, when we went to the North Pole. And of course, at that time, you're like, whoa, that's so exciting. But then once you get there, I mean, you have to walk to 10 to 12 hours a day and at minus 40 degrees. So it's not as exciting as you had originally planned because you expected to see Santa Claus and, polar bears. So yeah, we really got introduced to that at a young age.
And it's funny you mentioned that story because it reminds me of a specific moment during that expedition. We were approaching the North Pole, and suddenly Pups came to us and he said, stop here. And he unhooks the sled from Jess, because we were both pulling the same sled, and he puts it onto me, and he says, Jess, you stay here, Annika, you come along with me. And we were really confused. We're like, what's going on, Pups? But in minus 30 degrees, whiteout conditions, strong wind, you do not question the man whose hands your life is in, right? So you just go for it. And so Jess stood there with mumps back in the cold, and Pups and I went to the North Pole. And then suddenly he handed over the GPS to me, and it indicated that we were at 90 degrees north, and that meant that we had finally made it. And then he looked at me and he said, "Congrats, Annika, you are officially the youngest kid to ever ski the last degree to the North Pole." And I was so excited, obviously overcome with joy and pride. And then he turns around and he looks at Jess and he waits for her to come along. And so up she comes on her little skis. And then he takes the GPS from me, gives it to Jess, and says, "Congrats, Jess. You just beat your sister's record to the North Pole." I was 14 and she was 12, so it's okay.
Yeah.
But that moment stuck with me for the rest of my life, because it was really shaping in the way that it highlighted the importance of personal achievement, but also the importance of fighting for your dreams. And at the same time, it also underlined the importance of competition in life, and how no matter what you do, somebody's always going to be bigger and better than you and come and plant the flag right in front of your nose. But the overall message was really the importance of fairness and strong family bonds.
Yeah, I guess he always tried to educate us and transmit those values to us. And at a young age, the family bond was so important. And once we planted that flag, we had to pack everything up super quickly because the storm was coming. And so we pitched the tent and we stayed stuck in that 3-person tent, the 4 of us, for 3 days straight. And well, it was crazy outside and a complete whiteout. We were just the 4 of us in the little tent, and it felt safe. And it was so important to be able to share that moment together. And we always knew that we would always be the 4 of us.
So that's true. That is a huge topic for you, like family. It's a very strong bond, but it could be also limiting. And how did you broke free from that family?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's a question that we are often asked, especially today. And it's an important topic because it's true that that strong family bond comes and supports, but at the same time, it limits individual freedom, right? And what's important is that it's always kind of set us and put us expectations in our life. And it's important to keep that in mind, is that having that strong family bond is beautiful, and it gives you that feeling of us against the world. But at the same time, that strong father figure can sometimes give you that feeling of being in the shadow. And that's where our whole life has been about, that challenge of breaking free from those expectations and standing out of the shadow.
Yeah, and for us, it only came later on in life, and unfortunately, it came with the loss of our mother. And it kind of threw us off. It shook, it made that family bond a bit vulnerable, and we didn't know what to do and how we were going to move forward from that. And so we sat down and we decided that we were going to do it the way we know best, and that would be to go on adventure. So we traveled to Pakistan and we walked to the base camp of K2 with our dad. And just the hike up to get to base camp, it's not only challenging physically, there's a lot of hardship, but you also do all that journey inside of you, and you go through loss and grief, and you're surrounded by these 8,000-meter peaks, and you just feel super vulnerable. So it was a bit of an intense moment, but for me, there's just this one specific image that I keep in my mind, and it was waking up in the morning and seeing our father gazing at K2 with stars in his eyes. And the day would go by, and then we'd go back to sleep, and he'd still be there, looking at K2 with stars in his eyes. And for me, just seeing him so connected to nature in that way of healing, and he had this summit and goal and this objective to dream big, and in a sense, it made us realize that we also had to climb our mountain and go to the top of K2, and we had our own K2s to climb.
So what did you do?
What did we do? We went back.
Yeah, well, we got back, and from that moment onwards, Annika and I decided that we would support him in his adventures, and that we would help build his adventures with him. And we just wanted to add a little twist and do it in our own way.
Exactly. I think that's the key message there, is that we said, okay, we're going to support you from now on, but we want things to be our way, or we want to do it our way at least. And we also want to build our heritage. Now, reaching the threshold of our 30s, these are the questions you start asking yourself. But at the same time, we were so fortunate to, through our entire lives, to be shared these strong values and messages, the ones he shared in the video, to just simply to us. And we felt as though it was almost selfish to keep those messages, because they can be applied to anybody, everywhere. And so we also decided that, yes, we're going to do things our way. We are going to support you, but we want to be spokeswomen for those same messages, because in a way, I think we're approaching the state of embodying those messages. And that's when we decided that, yes, we're going to do things our way, without twists, and be spokeswomen. And then we're also going to add value to the world in different types of projects and spread those messages through what we do at work with our incredible team at the office, through environmental projects for the youth, for example, and also going on my own adventures, for example. I think I've always been passionate about adventures, clearly. And then recently I realized that we always went on adventures in our family, but never alone, and so I decided maybe I should start setting myself a few personal challenges. And that's when I decided, just my recent endeavor was to cross Europe on a solo cycling trip. And I remember the specific moment when I was sitting in the car next to Pups, and I was really excited about telling him my idea. Because I had imagined that his entire life he was waiting for Jess and I, or one or the other, to become an adventurer and to follow into his footsteps. So with much anticipation, I'm like, okay, so I got to tell you my plan. And so I shared with him my objective of meeting him in Iceland on my bicycle while he was sailing along. And all he did was like shrug his shoulders and say, okay, that's cool. And I was really disappointed. I don't know, I was like, seriously, that's all? Haven't you been waiting for this your entire life? And then in that moment of disappointment, I realized that it was actually pure liberation, because I didn't have to do it or engage in my own adventures for him. I had to do it for myself. And I didn't need his approval. And that as long as I do what I love, he will be proud of me.
Yeah, isn't it liberating?
It is very liberating.
And so, what kind of adventure did you do? Did you also go through?
Well, I mean, I did have a bit of a similar moment, but I quickly realized that I wasn't as adventurous as my father and my sister. I mean, I couldn't keep up with them with my short legs. And so my adventure would be more into the business world. For me, it was important to make a difference. And I remember that moment when we were in Tromsø to pick up our dad from his last expedition. And 2 days later, he was going to Saudi Arabia to drive buggies in the desert and participate in the Rallye Dakar. And we traveled with him, and while we were on our way, we just kind of sat him down, and we were like, listen, Dad, you know, us doing our job as his communication agents and, you know, his taking care of his image and so on, we kind of cautioned him that there could be a negative perception transitioning from the North Pole, where he was kind of in a critical situation due to the ice conditions, to going to Saudi Arabia and driving buggies in the desert. And then he looked at us and he was like, my babies, it's a storm in a teacup. And I was like, okay. But it was that moment when he said it where, as well, I just kind of similarly felt liberated, because I was like, in any case, he's going to go out and do it. He doesn't really care what people think. So that responsibility of, you know, having to take care of him and his image just kind of, you know, left. And we went there, and in any case, we realized that people are going to still do the things they love doing, but we have to find a way to do it differently. And from that storm in a teacup, that gave birth to our startup, which develops a hydrogen fuel cell to decarbonize the world, the industry and mobility. And yeah, and today, I am in that position and I'm going on my own little path in that adventure of a business.
I love that, knowing that it's kind of really dream big, right? And I love that it starts with, instead of having to stop doing what we want to do, let's find another way to keep doing what we love to do without harming. And that kind of summarizes a lot of things, coming from planting a flag in the North Pole to going on a solo cycling trip and starting a startup that wants to decarbonize the car industry. So it's really going to kind of full circle, right? And I think it might be a good opportunity to ask you, looking back from where you're now, looking back to all of it, back to the North Pole, what is your takeaway from all this journey?
Looking back, looking back to the video and the messages that he shared, I just remember feeling that pressure to not disappoint, the pressure of living in the shadow of such an incredible man and an incredible father figure. But today, with all those experiences, we realized that he didn't want us to live in that shadow. What he was trying to do was really to set us on our own path, our individual paths, without putting too much pressure on us. And with, just suddenly introducing us through those experiences, what he was trying to teach us. So, yeah.
And it's funny you say that. It makes me think of a story he loves to share in all of his conferences. And it's that story where he was just a young child and he had just watched his father win a rugby game, and he followed him into the locker room and he looked up at him and he said, "Wow, one day I want to be like you, Dad." And his dad said, "Mike, you're not going to be like me." And he was really disappointed. And then his dad added, "You can't be like me because you are you, Mike. You are nobody else. And I can already see that one day you're going to be bigger and better than me." And for some reason, being right here, right now, something is falling into place.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Too.